Hello and welcome to part 3 of Biomechanics of Exercise Application with Training Made Fun. Now we're going to be talking about lever classes. When we talk about lever classes, what we're really talking about is 3 general classifications for levers. We have our first class lever, our second class lever, and our third class lever in order shown here on this slide. Okay. Our first class lever, we're looking at 3 basic concepts that apply to each lever, or 3 basic aspects to each lever class, regardless whether it's a first, second, or third class lever. And these levers, by the way, we're all talking about 2 places, or a place we should say, where 2 bones meet. That's a lever system, if you will, and it makes a certain lever class of either first class lever, second class lever, or third class lever, depending upon which joint we're talking about in the body, relative to the specific action that's being engaged and where the force is being applied. And therein we have our 3 basic aspects to every lever class. E, which is the effort, very small letter right here. E right there. E here is on the left, you'll notice. E here is actually on the right over here, and E is in the middle here. That's how we separate differentiation between first, second, third class lever. Where's the effort versus where is the F, which is fulcrum, which you could also say is axis. We often refer to the phrase or the term axis as opposed to fulcrum. They are the same thing. The joint, a place where the 2 bones meet, the joint itself is the fulcrum, is the axis. Then we have the R, which is the resistance. Now that could be the body weight resistance or it could be external load of some kind. All depends on what exercise we're doing. So we'll start with our first class lever. And the application of these 3 aspects makes it a first class lever because the fulcrum is in the middle, effort's one side, resistance is the other. So whenever you can find any exercise whereby you have an axis, which is the joint, and you find that the muscle attaches, the muscle that's doing the work, has an attachment on one side of the joint, and the load, or the resistance, if you will, is on the other side of that joint, that makes it a first class lever. In this case, we're talking about the head and neck. You have the muscles here of the spine going up into the skull here. A lot of muscles that are helping try to pull your head. This picture should be pulling, the muscles should be pulling them down toward the cervical spine and the scapula, shoulder blades here, okay, pulling this way. Whereas the picture does show one error in this image here, shows resistance going upward. Well, if that's true, if the resistance is going upward, this person must be hanging upside down. Okay, so really the resistance should be going the other direction, pulling down. So the muscle of the neck would be pulling you upward here, and the resistance is trying to pull you downward there. The axis is the spine, okay, the cervical spine in this case. And this load is really the skull essentially, and the skull is trying to pull you forward here because gravity's pulling you, right? And you've ever had anybody wonder why their neck bothers them so much all the time? Well, if you sit in a chair for long periods with your head forward, what's naturally happening is gravity's pulling on your head downward. The muscles of your neck and your trapezius muscles and all the cervical muscles, a lot of muscles in this area here, are trying to pull you, keep you upright, or keep that head up. Whereas if you get better posture and be more upright, and we've referred to this in kinesiology videos, the least stressful positions are therefore going to make it much more efficient for your body, less stress on your body when you don't want stress on your body. But when we're trying to actually get stronger, I don't know why you'd want to have your head forward here trying to get stronger like that. But I guess if that was a goal, you could argue that one. Well, we want to have good posture so that when the time comes, we want you to run, want you to push weight around, pull weight around, want you to jump, want you to do any sort of exertion of motion. We want you to have less stress on you so you can be more efficient with your motion, be more exercise efficient, and you can be more economical in your energy expenditure, which is good, which allows you then, when the time comes, to exert more energy. You've already got it because you're not wasting so much energy all the time and what some people call energy leaks all day long with bad posture, with bad positions of your body, with bad positions during exercises. You're actually going to be able to get stronger and be able to do more work and have more energy and lose more weight, all these great things when you have better positioning of your body during exercise, let alone times when you're not doing anything. Okay. That said, our first class lever is not very common. In this case, the attachment of the muscle to the bone here, the skull here, that distance for the effort attaches to the bone, and the distance to the axis or the fulcrum is called the effort arm. Okay. And remember, we've briefly talked about lever arms or distances from the joint itself to the length of a given bone. The longer it is, the more force required to basically move that lever, because the lever is so long, and the farther, or more importantly, wherever the load is on that lever, the farther it is from that joint, the more effort going to be required, more force output required for the muscle to move that load, okay? So genetic disadvantage for tall people doing strength training exercises, genetic advantage doing strength exercises for short people, right? And that said, when we have here, back to our first class lever, we have that resistance here. Look in this picture, you take out the nose because that's cartilage, just the skull itself here. Distance from basically the edge of the skull to the axis, distance from the application of the effort arm here, and this is the resistance arm here, from the skull, edge of the skull out to the axis here, effort arm. If the resistance arm and the effort arm are equal, then we're talking about a pretty balanced equation. Okay, but the more you start moving that load outward toward the resistance arm has what we call a mechanical advantage, and the effort arm has a mechanical disadvantage. When you have a disadvantage, it means you have to work harder. Okay, perfect world, you want the resistance to work at a disadvantage, and you want the effort to work at an advantage from the standpoint of long-term benefit to you. Okay, don't confuse it with, hey, this is again the argument some people try to make because they want to make it into, well, if you work harder, it's better. That's not necessarily true in many cases. It's exactly the opposite of true. They're saying, well, it's good, we're getting stronger this way. You're getting better at being in that position with more stress on your neck, increasing all the time. And yeah, your body's getting used to it, which is exactly why then you sit down and naturally your body goes forward. You've gotten used to it. The body wants to go there. It thinks that's the normal thing now, although it will continue to add more stress to your neck. Not ideal. First class levers are not very common. It's basically an ear. If you want to change that F to an A, EAR, ear, is a first class lever. Effort, access, resistance. Effort, the point where the muscle attaches into the bone, the muscle that's doing the work. It inserts into the bone there. It pulls toward the origin. The origin, or multiple origins here, along the cervical spine and the scapula. And the insertion point here is always where we begin the effort arm. The insertion point of the muscle to the bone is the initiation point of that effort arm. And the distance to the axis is the length of that effort arm. And again, we're looking for advantage to whichever arm we're talking about if the length is going to be longer. If the length is shorter, disadvantage. Okay? In this case, when we talk about adding load or external resistance, if you will. The load here for the resistance arm, the point of application of the resistance, well, it's this entire head. Gravity pulling at the edge, outer edge here, that's where that is. Line of force going straight down there. That distance here is a resistance arm. Okay, if the person had a really long head, like a bird, right? Then these muscles of the neck would have to work so insanely hard to keep that neck in the right place. Or would have to have a different design, like birds do, of the spine, of the musculature in the neck, to design it in such a way that's not quite so inefficient and stressful. Okay. That said, second class lever, the least common, in the body, whereby now you have the axis or fulcrum on the left, the resistance is in the middle. This doesn't happen other than this one time. And the effort here is on the right side. So here we have the resistance, the fulcrum or axis here, ball of your foot like in a calf raise. Then the load of your body weight goes down right straight through your bones, down through that malleolus or malleolus, some people say. So you're talking about a distance from about roughly here to there for your resistance arm, okay? And the muscles of your calf are the ones that perform plantar flexion, that are trying to bring your, basically trying to point your toe, right? Bring your heel up off the ground, getting that calf raise that we're looking at here. The gastrocnemius, the bigger muscle behind, the soleus, the thinner one below. The calcaneus is the heel bone there. This is the Achilles tendon, right? And technically, it's always tendons that pull on bone, not muscles. Muscles pull tendons. Tendons then try to produce that same level of force onto the bone. And we come back to the idea of the connective tissue. If the tendons or the ligaments can't handle the force, who cares how strong the bones or the muscles are? Because if the tendons or ligaments can't handle it, you're not going to do this for very long without major injury, and maybe you never fully recover from that. Connective tissue is far more important, which means lower load, slower speeds, until we get strong enough, then we can start handling higher speeds or higher force output. Okay? In this case, well, the distance from the ankle, or the heel, we should say, to the axis is longer than is the distance from the resistance straight through the body here, body weight here to there. How much farther? 20% maybe, something like that, maybe more. But that's enough to make a dramatic difference in how much force requirement there is to lift your body weight off the ground. Now, a lot of that has to do with the mechanics of the way the joints are designed as a whole, but from a general standpoint of application of force, your calf muscles don't have to work all that hard to do that because they have a mechanical advantage based upon the design of the joint. Structure beats mass every day of the week. someone has a more efficient structure, they can produce less force to actually entertain the same action that someone who has a less efficient structure. Consequently, unless the other person is dramatically stronger than the person with the efficient structure, it's going to be difficult to beat them. So that's where genetics can play a great role with design of structure and the way we're built. Okay. That said, hey, you can't control the way you're built. It is what it is. But at least when you know, you can say, no wonder I can't do calf raises as much as the guy who's 5'2" and you're 6'3", with legs that are 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 inches longer or more than the person next to you. Or I should say your foot, maybe it's a size 14, 15 compared to someone with a size 6. There's a big difference there too, depending upon the weight of the body and other factors as well. But generally speaking, from a mechanical standpoint of length of foot, that person with a shorter foot's going to have an easier time, let alone if someone had some unusual design here where their heel, distance from their heel to their malleolus or the midpoint of load going straight down here, if there was a longer distance there, they would actually have a mechanical advantage too over you in doing calf raises. Okay, interesting, right? And your second class lever, the most rare in the body, that gives you a mechanical advantage, the only time you get an inherent mechanical advantage, because the effort is always farther from the axis than is the resistance. A-R-E, R for a second class lever. Third class lever, we're talking about here the axis or fulcrum is the elbow in this case. The effort is the biceps muscles, biceps brachii and other muscles here, attaching here, the tendon here. In this case, we're looking at pretty much the radius side being the thumb side versus it could be potentially, some of the muscles there could be attached to the ulna as well, but in this case, we'll look at the radius. The attachment of the radius is pretty darn close to that elbow joint here, okay? Pretty darn close to it. And then we have the application of the load out here in the hand, way out here. And again, if that person has a very long arm, they have a very long resistance arm. If they have a very long resistance arm, they have to work a whole lot harder to move smaller dumbbells. I get the point now where I laugh at people, and not to be condescending or have take an issue with them, I'm just more concerned about why you're so worried about what weight you're lifting, really, when you should be more worried about what weight can you lift efficiently to gain the force output you're looking for to get stronger. Whatever weight you can lift for the appropriate amount of time with the proper speed is going to give you the most benefit. Not worry about the weight itself, because there's so many other genetic factors based on your structure, other things that play a role that you can't control. Stop worrying about the weight, move the weight you can control, and you'll get stronger. It's really pretty simple. Okay, then we got to look at the work ratio, rest ratio, and all of that. That's more in program design. Okay, but that's our starting point. So here, distance where that tendon attaches that bone, I mean, this is pretty magnified, but really, this is not a big distance. This is an inch or two at the very most, distance from your biceps tendon there attaching into that, the tendon from the biceps there attaching into your radius is pretty darn close to your elbow. Then you have this load way out here in your hand. We're probably looking at a lot of people at 7, 8, 9, 10 times farther away. So you're looking at probably, if you have a 20-pound dumbbell in your hands, you're looking at maybe having to exert 160 to 200 pounds of force for a 20-pound dumbbell. So I literally shake my head when people have a 40-pound dumbbell in their hands. You're not going to rep that unless you're a freak in nature. Probably very short. Okay, you have to have a lot of mass, be very, very short. And maybe have some unusual distance whereby the tendon here is actually a little farther away from the elbow. That would help you. And your forearm is shorter. That would help you. You being bigger, that would help you. You having a larger arm, that'll help you, right? All those things are advantages. But generally speaking, it's going to take a freak of nature to take a 40-pound dumbbell and make that what some people do, 10, 12 reps, which generally speaking shouldn't be about reps, should be about duration of time. It should be, generally speaking, if we're looking at hypertrophy or strength endurance, we're looking at least 40 seconds or more as opposed to a number of reps. Stop counting reps. We'll talk about the program design as well. No more counting reps, go for time. That's what we're really talking about. But that said, if you want to actually engage that significant load for a long enough period to get the benefit of size improvement, you're going to have something you can handle for that period of time. And unless you're looking at an absolute freak, and we mean that in a good way, you're not moving that 40-pound dumbbell around with good form for 40 seconds or more. It's not going to happen. And generally speaking, find the one, whatever it is, if you can, more power to you. You do that. Just make sure that axis, as we mentioned kind of before, the axis can't move. Okay? The axis cannot move. If you want to actually maximize the benefit to the muscles you're trying to work, the axis where the muscle is revolving around, helping move that axis point, which is what the biceps are doing here to gain the benefit from arm curls in the first place. Okay? If you want to really maximize the benefit to your biceps, the axis shouldn't move. It should stay still. You can revolve around it, but keep that axis as close to as still as possible. We call it the path of instantaneous center of rotation. The more still it stays, the more benefit you get to the muscles that are trying to perform the work and moving that forearm against that humerus. Okay? A lot of things to think about, a lot of things to weigh, but in AER, the resistance being far away, effort often usually being very, very close in most situations of third-class levers, with the axis being here. By the way, your third-class lever is the most common lever class system in your body, which means most of your joints are third-class levers, which means most of them are not capable of producing a lot of force on their own, which should bring you back around to the idea that maybe I should worry more about moving well, moving under control, finding a load I can handle, and going upward from there as I get better at it, rather than worrying about an absolute load like the guy next to me lifting a 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 pound. Find the one you can control to maximize the benefit from. You'll get the benefit, and longer term, chances are, if you're the one with control, you're the one that's going to get stronger. Now we'll talk about torque. And what torque really is, we've already kind of alluded to it. It's just a simple amount of load or tension on a given joint, or more specifically, affecting the muscle and the joint, both, at any particular moment in time. So in other words, if you have we'll talk about these animations, we'll show these animations shortly here. If the load is straight down through your bone in line with gravity, like in a free weight exercise, there's no torque. But when that load moves out farther away from your axis point, your joint, and you have the pull of gravity, you increase that torque dramatically, which comes to our basic concepts here. We're talking about torque being three things: the amount of force applied, amount of force you have to exert against whatever force externally you have, both aspects of it. How much load's in your hand? External force. How much force required from you? Internal force. And if you're lifting a dumbbell, the external force never changes, but the resistance does. Because if the distance changes, which it will, as you move, the distance will get farther from you or closer to you. From a standpoint of distance from the axis out toward the motion of the arm out in front of you versus when it comes over the top of your elbow, which will show some animations here in a moment to show that. Distance changes, resistance changes. Resistance changes, amount of force output changes. The load itself has not, your resistance has, okay? Making it harder or easier. The angle of application, or the force angle, is a part of that as well. Based on that angle in space, how's that going to affect you relative to the joint? Because at a certain point, nothing will be happening, and at some points, a lot more force activation is required. And which comes to our final point before we look at some animations here, the concept of a moment arm. The moment arm is essentially this concept of the distance between the axis and the line of force. The axis is your joint. The line of force is take wherever that weight is in your hand, and if you're talking about free weight exercises, it's going straight down from the weight. Wherever the weight goes in space, that line is an invisible line you cannot see. It's always going to stay pulling straight down to the ground from the point of wherever you got the weight in your hand. Okay? If it's body weight, then we talk about center mass, and we actually have the line of force going straight down from your center mass down toward gravity, down toward the ground. Body weight squat, as you lean forward, your center mass moves out, so you'll see the line of force go outward, straight down to the ground from your center of mass, right? So as you stand straight up, your center of mass is in alignment with this invisible line of force. We'll show this in a moment. There's no torque, there's no benefit. So standing straight up in a squat, whether you're loaded or unloaded, is called wasting time. No benefit there. Is it wrong? Did not say that. Is it bad? No, it is not. Is it a rest? Yes, it is. You're not getting any benefit there from a standpoint of leg strengthening by standing straight up and down. So maybe you're better off stopping before you get fully standing, which is sacrilege for some people when they talk about form. If that's what you want to do, and you want to come all the way up and stand to a full stand, you can certainly do that. You certainly don't want to lock any joints under stress. Locking a joint under stress is going to create maximal congruency of two bones at a given joint and increase the probability of major injury there. Don't ever want to do that. But that said, can you come all the way up? Sure you can. Are you getting any benefit from the standpoint of the load at that point? No, you're not. What's your goal? A rest every single rep, or do you want to maintain that stress and not quite come to a full stand and go back down, which is what we would recommend you do. Not wrong either way, but what's your goal? You're going to get stronger, want to produce more force, get stronger endurance-wise, get more hypertrophy, get stronger maximal force production. Don't lose the exertion. Don't lose any torque point or any point where there's still a moment arm in an exercise throughout the entire duration of the set until the set is over. Okay? And that said, we want to make sure to answer these questions. Do we want to keep some torque on the joints for strength benefit? Yes, we do. Do we want to eliminate torque altogether? No, we don't. If we want the benefit of force output versus external force to maximize strength and minimize joint stress and connective tissue stress to the benefit and betterment of our cells with strength. And we'll have our final component, part 4, for our biomechanics video up next.